right. Good evening, Cristina. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. Welcome to Iblis Manifestations.
My pleasure.
Just to give a little bit of a background, I'm actually, I would say, a long-time customer of yours. I think I found some of your work back in, I'm going to guess it was towards the end of 2017, because that was the year where I was really getting into that kind of stuff. And I remember thinking up some of the planetary oils that you had and incorporating that into my work with my band Trivex, as I already mentioned to you in person. And I've been very fascinated by this sort of topic and the kind of work that you do. So I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you. So just from the get-go, could you perhaps give us a little bit of a background in terms of what it is that you do?
Okay.
If that's easy enough. I know it's a very broad question because you do a lot of different things.
I do a lot, yes. When someone asks me, like, I think one of the most difficult questions, the people ask me, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, trying to figure out how many people. I say I'm just polymath professionals. I do many things. Just I try not to bore myself. But anyway, specifically for what you are referring to, well, we need to go back a little bit.
Sure.
And give a little bit of background about who I am, what I do. And I have started, I work with, in the spiritual, of course, with spiritual, in the spiritual world, okay? I think every one of us is really into the spiritual world. Sometimes we might be aware of that or not, but it's one of the layers that our reality is actually built on, so it's inevitable. And let's say that everything started with my personal spiritual religious journey. And so when I discovered I was 13 years old. We're talking about more than 20 years ago. I discovered the pagan spirituality and the pagan path, and what was at that time neo-paganism, and that brought me to a journey into myself, and which became really the focus of my life. And even if I have a degree in landscape architecture, and I also work as a landscape designer and garden designer, but that is more like a kind, I would say, or part-time. Mm-hmm. And even if, and specifically, I specialized myself on healing gardens and therapeutic landscapes. So even in that path, there was a lot that was into really the holistic path and spirituality. But my main focus has always been my spiritual journey. And a very fundamental part of this journey was the relationship with nature and plants, and working with them, not just from healing point of view, but specifically from a magical and a spiritual point of view. And so my journey with working with plants that later brought to my business and brand that is In Lumine Lunae, as is known today, and my Occult Botanica. The journey with plants was started in the same time that my spiritual development started. So I've been working with plants from a spiritual and healing vibrational point of view more than 20 years now. So when I moved in UK, I was already making oils and incense and spray, basically mostly for my home practice. So when I moved in the UK, I decided to just share this creation of mine with the rest of the world. And so I decided to create my business that is In Lumine Lunae. And what I do, I create this plant-based product for spiritual practices and vibrational healing, and also occult perfumery. And is another way I help people in the human and healing and spiritual journey. We could easily define it as esoteric herbalism, occult herbalism. I call it occult botanica to give an idea, but there is so much into that. Really, there is plant spirit shamanism, there is occult knowledge, of course, and many years of studies and practice. And so it's not easy to explain or clearly or place into a clear category what is that I do. I do many things, and that is my own way to contribute to the development of people's spiritual path and also evolution into the spiritual realm. Let's say like this.
That's fascinating. And just I'd really like to get more into the plant and herbal aspect of things as well, which I find absolutely fascinating. And, just the whole spiritual connotation and the sort of the way that we can use plants as tools for that. There's obviously the psychedelic elements to that, but then there's also the healing and the other things. But just quickly before we go into that, you mentioned that at the age of 13, you were getting into, I suppose, a pagan spirituality and cultures. You are from Italy, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and with Italy, I understand that especially a lot of the old school generations, there's like a lot of hardcore Christians, or there's a lot of that aspect of spirituality in the sense that a lot of very strict and like black and white religious approach has been there. Maybe not so much nowadays, but it's one of them countries where there's always been a very strict old school approach to religion and spirituality. So I'm just wondering if you could just shed a little bit more light on just your initial background and what that discovery itself was like to begin with.
Well, yes, I grew up, my family is Catholic, but because of tradition. They weren't really very involved with church or going to church. So they were very open-minded. And I was really lucky to receive an education about values of life, respect and love and compassion, detached from the religious environment. So I grew up as a Catholic just because it was the tradition of the family. And I didn't really had I've always been very spiritual, okay? So even my detachment from the Catholics and the divine archetypes, if we can use these words, they main focus of the Catholicism wasn't, I never had it was a relationship that was very peaceful. I didn't have an aggressive, I wasn't angry. It wasn't really, so when I changed because I found a path that was more close and more, was better mirroring my inner world. And so the detachment was very pleasant, very flowing, very, very well. There wasn't a resistance. It wasn't so difficult for me detach from the path. There was more like a family tradition, but really, I couldn't experience that connection with the divine as I did by finding my own path. So what happened? It's a long story. Well, do we have time? We
have absolutely time for long stories.
What happened was that I don't remember how exactly, but I found myself being interested in the figure of the witch and witches. And so I started to research. It was also around 13 years old was also when I started to being able to access internet. Now, I cannot tell you which year was exactly, but more than 20 years ago, for sure, because I'm 36 now. So, and so for some reason, I found myself involved with these learning about these figures and all what was the neo-pagan movement that was associated with it at the time I was growing up as a teen. One day, I had a dream that I was buying a book. One of these books that was talking about this neo-pagan tradition. And the dream time for me has always been really important in my practice. So I dreamed that I was buying this book, that I was finding this book. So a couple of weeks after, 2-3 weeks after, I was with my mother in a store, which also is a kind of wholesale store. So it's not a store that you find that had a very small session about CD, music CD, and some books. And I have no idea how that book was in there. An occult book in a place where you buy things for restaurants and clothes, like nothing, didn't have anything to do with that. But I found it. Yes, someone put in there. And I went to my mother, remember, because of course being a teen, I said, "Mom, can we buy this? Can you buy me a book?" And my mother said, "You want to read? I buy all the books you want." Just because you want to read. Sure. Said, great. And so with that, it started my path. And I started to self-experimenting and also to start to meet people in my home country, other sister on the path, which we started also the first so-called pagan moot in my city, which is a big city because I come from Catania, which is a big city of Sicily. So we started the first pagan moot. So we really are connected to the pagan movement, and that started to develop at those time in my own city, where I come from. And in this path of discovering and self-discovering, also, I start to see that I was really attracted from the envision of the divine from a female point of view. This great mother, if we want to use a more known terms. And so many years after, already I was many years after my path, into my path, did some of my practice, I was in London for a holiday. And I went to an occult bookstore and I bought another book. It looks like books are kind of my gates to otherworldly places and path in my life. Sure. So I bought another book that was actually the book of the woman that then became my mentor. Oh. And which was a book talking about female mysteries and the Dianic Tradition, which is the tradition I'm ordained into, which is a wholly female spiritual path. Anyway, I was in the underground of London and I was reading this book, and in my wonderful mind I would say, I would like so much to be able to study with one of these women that are involved, this big name that are involved with my specific tradition. Then I went along with my life. I got my degree in landscape architecture. I did my master degree in safety or natural conservation, all these kind of things. I wrote my thesis, which was about healing garden, that was published as a book. Anyway, I did my life, my own things. And then I started to look for some internship. I wanted to do some internship here in UK because I wanted to move to UK. Mm-hmm. And so I started to use LinkedIn to contact professionals to find a way to move in the UK. If someone that wanted to offer me an internship on garden design and landscape architect firms, whatever it was. Sure. Of course, no one answered me. The only person that answered me was a woman a landscape architect, living in California, in a place I didn't even know existed. And I just wanted to escape. And so I say, yes, okay, you want me? I come to USA and do this internship as as a landscape architect. So I went there. She was a very spiritual woman as well. Before leaving, I say, you know what, let's see if there is some circle, some groups of my specific tradition, the tradition I'm interested into, in the area I'm moving. And so through that, I met an Italian-American woman that was Dianic. And she said, yes, let's meet. And I bring you to one of the celebrations that we do with our church, with our temple. Sometimes they call church, group, temples, depend. And they say, that's great. So when I moved in USA, after a couple of months, I meet with this woman. She bring me to this celebration. And there I met which is my mentor, that is Ruth Barrett, which is the woman I was reading the book in London many years before. And there was a sort of connection, like we recognize each other immediately. We are very good friends now. And what happened, she was moving back. Ruth was moving back in USA in a area close where I was living to start a new school for priestessing. So how you can see, all my life basically was like a consequence of event that was bringing me there and in the development of my spiritual life. Through that, I got my ordination as a priestess. Then I moved back to Italy because my visa was expired and I wanted to share what I learned there and the experience I had with my Italian sisters. Then I had the opportunity to move here in UK, and I keep doing this basically through online, through mentoring, through courses, together with other service that I offer, which is the occult botanica and the consultancy, the divination, and the channeling sometimes when I talk with people, because one of the things I noticed in my life, whenever I was going, there was always in the development of the evening, even if it was even going to dance somewhere, I always was ending up talking with someone about spiritual things and someone that needed to hear something, someone that I didn't even know. So on a certain point, I say, okay, I got it. That's my life. That's what I came here to do. And in the meantime, let's hope to have fun in the way.
Of course. That's a very interesting story, and just to give you a little bit of insight into my own mindset as well. I'm a firm believer of these things, and it's fascinating and by these things, I mean, when you observe the butterfly effect that happens throughout life and how many of them it takes to get to the point that you want to get to. And a lot of times it feels like these things almost choose us. I mean, perhaps we have a bit of a different background, but I can see the similarities in the sense that obviously I was born and raised in Iran. And that's a hardcore Islamic country, and somehow I ended up becoming a black metal musician, which is probably like, that's about as anti-establishment as I think it can get, So, and for me, and the way that I have met people along the way here, people whose music I used to listen to way back there, and I never thought I'd ever see a live show again. And then now I am like sharing a drink with that same person some years later in the UK. In that sense, I do actually relate to your story in a sense, but also I think the admirable point that I can also recognize in that is the fact that now, in terms of ideology and things like that, that's a whole conversation we can get into. But from what I can see just on the surface is the fact that you took the search of something that was dear to you and that you were passionate about and that you recognize parts of yourself within that. And through reaching that within yourself, you were then able to basically help out other people because of it. Which is, I don't know how accurate you would say that is.
Yeah, that's exactly. I think is I'm a very self-aware person. I tend to really sometimes be my own therapist and try to figure out what is going on, and also about my own reaction to things, and I apply this to everything. And so this kind of inner dialogue and way to deal with myself, for example, was also something that it is something that is very useful to me when I deal with other people, with my like when I do divination, when I do mentoring, when I do consultations, to try to help other people as well. And with me often, and this is something that everyone, it might be one of those quotes that when the people think to me, they know for sure. Something I always say when I do this kind of thing is, I don't know if I say it to you as well, probably I did, is that I might have something to tell you. I might tell you something that makes absolutely no sense for me, but for some reason I have the need to tell you and probably makes sense for you. So this is sometimes like is a kind of inner knowing, and often, and this is specifically, for example, connected also the name that I use for my own page, which is ASTRUM LUCIFERA, which is because the way I interact with people and I help people, women on my specific path, but even in general, I bring a light on those dark places so people see things. So
Lucifera like, as in light bringer.
Yes.
I understand.
You know? And so those places can be the dark places of your mind, can be something you are not see, can be something I need to tell you because come from somewhere. And so that is because within your path you also you understand what might be your purpose, your way to act and interact. And I saw that was a recurring theme in my way of interacting with people, to like turn this little light and see, I think this is the problem. I think there is something there. I think we need to go in that place. And then people, whoa, yes, I can see now. It makes perfectly sense. And these little things can make so much of a difference for a person that is maybe in the moment of confusion, or like, because it's so difficult when we are into something, you know, to try, we have a very good ability to step out and be an observer, which I can do very well being a Gemini. So I leave one of the personality in there and the other go out and say, okay, let's see where is the problem in here. But most of the time, because also the intensity of emotion, of our emotion, to which we can also be addicted to, is very difficult to see clearly, you know?
What do you mean when you say addicted to the intensity of the emotions? That's a very interesting
not the intensity, to the emotions itself.
Okay, and this can be negative emotions as well, presumably.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. And that is one of the big problems that we often do not understand, our addiction to our emotion, which is very simple emotional hormones, chemicals inside the body. It's not difficult to understand how we can be addicted to emotions. And we can be addicted to positive emotions or negative emotion as well. And we all have ours. And usually when an emotion it stays in our life for long time and many years, that can become an addiction. We can be addicted to happiness. We can be addicted to anger. We can be addicted to victimism. We can be addicted to abuse, which is weirdly, but we can. We can be addicted to live always on a adrenaline drive.
Sure. I guess one good way of also putting it, aside from calling it addiction, is I guess how someone would identify themselves. Because just like you said, I think a lot of it can be down to perspective. And I get this and I recognize this within myself a lot of times, is that things are going great, but then I'm so used to like just being angry at everything, and it's like I keep going back to that, and then I have to remind myself, and then find ways of channeling that just to get a little bit normal. Like just as a quick example, before you and I have this conversation, about 1 hour 15 minutes ago, I was just finishing up at the gym. And I had to do that just to be normal, so I can talk to you and be a normal person, But and that's obviously a part of my routine. And like you said, there's a physical side effect to it, and it's health and whatever. But to me, it's a vessel of channeling those emotions, which like you put, we can be addicted to. Just to, I think. So this is my understanding from what you're explaining to me, and obviously I have some familiarity with this. I have experienced some things with, like, for example, Reiki healing and things like that. Where and those kind of communications.
Okay.
I've been on I've been on the receiving end of it. Not I'm not an expert or anything, but basically the general understanding that I have is that a lot of people, because I think you have to consider how information itself is received. And we could get into just the subject of consciousness alone. And it's that we say that consciousness, or rather information, is external, and our minds, if you will, are a receiver for that. And I do feel this, especially when it comes to creativity and things like that. A lot of times, yes, it goes through you, but it feels like it comes from somewhere else, which I suppose could perhaps even relate to the Great Mother idea of the Dianic group that you are obviously a part of. But the thing that I get is that a lot of people don't know how to access that. And they have all this information coming at them, but whether it's through, I don't know, it's very tough to describe this, but I think unalignment, or misaligned, or being unbalanced is a way that I would probably describe it the best. And it's not, and I think this varies for people to people. So I would imagine that there's somehow a sphere of information that is surrounding each human being, and that the part of someone, let's say, for example, like yourself, who's perhaps a bit more in touch with that, is to tap into that and basically channel that information into that person. Do you think that's a good analogy for what it is that might be happening, if we can even describe such a thing in merely just words?
Okay. There's a lot of things going on in there.
Sure.
Okay,
I'm good at overwhelming people. I know this.
Oh, that's don't worry. Okay, let's start from like a belief that we need in order to understand some kind of dynamics, which is that we are made of many layers. We have an emotional layer, a spiritual etheric level, an energy level layer, and mental layer, okay, and the physical layer. Okay, all these layers make us. And different things can happen in these layers, but they also interact with each other. For example, if we consider disease and healing, okay, from an holistic point of view, which is this what we are talking, a disease usually always starts as a little seed that is present itself on the mental, on the emotional, or on the spiritual layer. There, if it's not addressed correctly, sometimes my tongue, and what happened, that moves into the physical body, and then we have the physical disease. Okay. And once it's in the physical body, it needs to be dealt with tools that address the physical body, but also to complete with the other tools that address the different layers. So healing is always holistic. In alternative, we are only dealing with something in a layer, and then it will come back in another form, probably. Okay, and so that we have some kind of dynamic as we work. So these layers they exist in every one of us. They can be fed and nurtured in a different way, in the same way a body of someone that goes to the gym is different and has a different resistance and has a different possibility to do some things that the body of someone that doesn't go to the gym and stay just sit in front of TV and eat, I don't know, hamburgers has. It's the same body, he has the same potentiality, the potential is the same, but is used in a different way. And that manifests a life and a reality that is completely different. Because I go to the gym 3 times a week, I do high intensity training, and I can run fast from here to there, and at the end, I'm okay. The person that doesn't go to the gym and does the same things and stop half of the way and say, this thing's impossible, cannot be done. Because his own tool and resource are different. And so this happened to all the other layers. If everything need to be trained. There might be the potential, but also we need to work on it. If we work on it, we can access some kind of information, we can develop some kind of abilities, but the potential for those is in everyone. Does it make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. The only thing that I will say, I mean, that's a great analogy that you made there, actually. I really enjoyed that. The only thing that I think is everyone has potential, but I don't know if that potential is exactly the same in everyone, meaning that every person is... I mean, you can look at this from a spiritual perspective, but I don't personally we could get into the specifics, but this becomes also like a question of ideology as well, of equality and things like that, like, for example, my level of strength, even if I didn't go to the gym, would still be different than my girlfriend's, for example. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And these kind of, hopefully anyway, but that's the kind of, I think in that sense, there can be differences. However, what I can see that you are saying is that there is potential within everyone, and it's up to them whether they want to utilize that or not, which I think is absolutely true. Because just on that topic, since we've connected on that topic of the gym thing, like for me, I didn't always used to go. I actually used to be, I don't know if you've seen this online actually, but I actually used to be very overweight. Like I used to be near around 119 kilos. And at the moment, I think I'm around 84 kilos. I've put on a little bit more weight again recently, just for like working out and muscle and things. But so I have been on both sides of that. I know what it feels like to not utilize those tools and just sit in front of the TV eating burgers, like you said. I've been there.
Of course, that was a simple analogy. That it's not that everyone that is overweight is because he's lazy. There are some people that have some situation that is more, there are hormonal things, so I don't want to body shaming anyone. It's just to understand the concept that I was trying to make.
Absolutely. No, I think you put that very well. It's not the case of body shaming. Like I said, I've been on the extreme end of both, I think. So that what I'm saying is that I have the perspective, but I think it's... I do think that there's also like even because one thing that I really like as well is I've noticed just coming from Iran specifically, we have a very big community of people who are into fitness over there. And just the other day, I saw this guy, and he was completely, I think his like the lower part of his body is pretty much disabled completely. But he has actually entered some like disabled category of bodybuilding, and his upper body looked fantastic, and he was very strong. And again, the reason why I bring that up is to the point of, okay, maybe not everyone has the same slate, whether it's genetics or whether it's even...
I think it's the fact that not everyone has the same path.
Sure.
Not anyone has to have to do the same experience. Not anyone has the same purpose.
Yeah.
So the tools we have are also specific for what we say we are meant to do. If we want to talk about, if we believe in a kind of predestination about things, where in this case I just mean what our higher self decided to experience in this existence,
Sure.
And so those tools that we have fit the needs of our own development and evolution. This means also people that are completely materialistic, where they came here just to experience, to be millionaire and live a very materialistic life, where maybe everything is built around taking advantage of other people, or just do things just for profit. And that's also is a path, is a life path. And although we can say, oh, but that is something bad, that cannot have the same value of someone that came in this life to heal people. The truth of the matter is that on a bigger scheme of everyone higher self-development, every life purpose has the same value and the same importance. Even if from an ethical point of view, we may believe, well, mine is more important because I do good. Doesn't, on the higher plane, on those, just to intend, on the different layers of evolution, and there is not, at least for what I believe, lots of the kind of duality of good and bad that we base our society on. I believe there is a lot of what I need to experience, what I need to do, what I need to learn, what information I need to have and bring back.
Sure. I think I understand where you're coming from with that. If you don't mind elaborating a little bit, the Dianics believe and honor the goddess, Great Mother of 10,000 names, conceived as cosmic womb, the primordial creative life, as matrix of being, as obviously quoted from ASTRUM LUCIFERA. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that. I bring this up since you mentioned about specifically tapping into that thing and bringing it back. So I feel like this is an appropriate time to discuss this.
Yeah. So basically, when we talk about the Great Mother from a Dianic point of view, we are talking about the web of life itself, which is those many consciousness within another bigger level of consciousness. In order to understand this, we need to have some principles that acknowledge some kind of some belief, which are the belief of animism, that means everything as a spirit, the holographic belief that everything contains the whole, doesn't matter in which level we are looking at it, and also the principle of interconnection, and that everything is connected, and once something connects, stay connected. So our vision as Dianics, our vision of the divine is this mother cell that generate everything and is everything at the same time. And we have the different aspect of that, which we see as the different goddess in all different all culture, which are in their self some consciousness of themselves, individual, but also connected to the matrix. They are part of that. So they have their own myth, they have their own characteristics, their own quality, their own vibrational energy, but they are still a part of the unicum that we call Great Mother. That's why Great Mother of 10,000 name. Dianic tradition specifically is based on the female mysteries. So from birth to death. So also the experiencing of the passage of women life, menstruation, pregnancy, menopause, and the shifting consciousness and energy that bring within us, therefore, which also are initiation door to different layers, which can also only be experienced by the embodiment of them. That's why they are called mysteries. And so it's strongly centered on that, but also on what does it mean to live as a woman in a patriarchal world. And that's why it's very much involved with politics and feminism. And so even the spiritual practices and the rituality is also has to do with our own life, daily life as women in this world. And this is why it's a specific path for women only. And this is why the only way to interact with a divine, that we can mirror within ourselves, is one that is our own representation. That's why we talk about grandmother. That's why we talk about goddesses. That's why we talk about female. But that is specifically, of course, of our own tradition. A man probably will feel more drawn toward a god, for example. And so my tradition works specifically with the unicum, where there is not really that division of male and female. We just call the female because we, starting from the female as origin, as creatrix, as giver of life, okay? But all the qualities are into that big matrix. So there is not the division, this is of what is femininity or masculinity, what is, or the gendered that we find, for example, very strongly in our society, you know? So any kind of energy, a destructive energy, a creative energy, a passive energy, an active energy, those are not female or masculine energy. They are all part of that divine matrix, grandmother, mother cell, one consciousness, and they are all within ourselves as well. So the fact that I am, for this reason, for example, we don't believe on the so-called, we have male and female energy within ourselves. No. I'm female because my body is female. And within myself, there is a word for many, many qualities and energy. So I can be sweet, I can be aggressive, I can be very angry, I can be very good to punch, and I can be very creative and elegant. Yeah, doesn't mean that some of those qualities are feminine and some are masculine. So we don't have that division. And so we don't give to energy a division in masculine and feminine. We don't say there is female energy and male energy. There is a body that has a sexuality and does experience of energy. And experience the energy in a different way, especially when we go through the mysteries of our sexuality, so from birth to death. But the energy is the same. What it changes is the experience we do, and so what we manifest using the energy, because the tools is different. And of course, I think I answered your first question that we went on other, but I hope that.
No, I understand, but this is actually very interesting to me. So you're saying that, I mean, just so I understood you correctly on this as well. So you're saying, let's say you're born into a male or a female body, and you experience energy within that. And yes, it's to say that the energy that you experience within that is not exclusive just to one side, but rather it's all things that belong to that body. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, we are whole. We are not half looking for other half, or we are not looking for things that matter. We are whole. Everything is in ourselves because we never been divided. on the first place. But there are some narratives that are very useful to the society we live into, and that was very damaging for female, for example, and were very much based on this concept of division and dependency, interdependency.
Such as
if we say that the quality of strength is a male quality, so it's men are strong, and the weak is a quality of female, and female are weak, women need a man to... That is a very simple... Okay?
But that's a complicated thing. I mean, first of all, one of the first things I believe on the second episode of the podcast, one thing that I opened this with is that the most painful experience a human being could have is giving birth. So, first of all, respect to women for doing that. So that's certainly anything but weak. But I think there's different types of strength, like, for example...
And I completely agree with that.
Yeah. There's strength of character, there's strength in compassion, but there's also strength in situations where it's physical. Yes. For example, in situations of, particularly in threat, or there's always like something to be done around the house, where there's like so many like running things about it, where it's like, let's get the man of the house, to lift this thing.
And I completely agree with that. What happened is that this very simple sample that I did, very simple, is to say that there has been historical time in our evolution when this kind of division and the principle that the woman was subordinate to the man was one of the base concepts of some society. And in order to understand this, we should talk about how the principle of the divine or the Great Mother was first divided in two parts, in a good goddess, in a bad goddess, and then an introduction of a god hero was brought to save the day. And then we need to go how the society changed and the role of the women within the society to become an search point, just tools to be used for reproduction, how women couldn't have their own money, how women, once they were getting married or those money were given to their husband. And sometimes even in some ritual we have, like the simple Christian marriage, we still see the passages from the father to the husband, the passage of the woman to a male authority, which is the father, to another male authority, which is the husband. So this concept, of subordination, based also on a generalization of qualities, and based on sex, have created some kind of problem within the society, a lot that was very damaging for women, for example, And, but that was just an example I did to explain how can be damaging to attach to qualities and energy a sexual reality, which is not. Or how damaging is to start from a point of view that see each person as incomplete within themselves, or split within themselves, or lacking something.
Yeah, I can see where that's coming from, and I can recognize that. I guess the main sort of point, I guess, or the maybe even the purpose of this particular tradition is actually to embrace the wholeness of the individual. I mean, not to. I don't mean this in a comical way, but there's that.
No.
Famous kind of.
The main purpose.
But the thing that I was going to say, there's that thing of I'm an independent woman who need no man kind of thing. Like that's. But I get that it's probably more than that. But I think
is mainly if a path of healing is a healing path. If we analyze the word healing, means whole, integrity. Is actually a path that helps to reconnect and reconcile and bring together all those parts of yourself that you as a woman also have demonized because the society said it wasn't good. And so you have fragmented yourself as the divine originally was fragmented, divided something good, something bad. So, and reclaim those qualities like sacred rage or your own sexuality and decide how many men you want to have sex or not, for example, or decide how you want to live your life, if you want to have children, if you want to be a mother, if you want to be a wife or not, without a touch of judgment, but bringing together all those parts of yourself in order to live as a true self in integrity. Because unfortunately, one of the bigger wounds that we have when we say this is good and this is bad, not, of course, we're not talking about things that are against the law, but when you say to a person, especially to a woman, you should smile more because it's not nice on a woman, the serious face, or why you are so angry, or why you are so aggressive, you should be more grateful, it's not nice for a woman. So at all those so many years of judgment and oppression that has been passed from generation to generation. So I carry the oppression of my grandmother and my grandmother, because that is past, as is past the mitochondrial DNA. Those memories, those oppressions are still in me. So it's really a path of self-healing, not through deny the importance of a male counterpart, or deny or hate, or just say, I am enough by myself, I don't need anyone. The real healing is what happened within by reconnecting and healing the fragment of yourself that have been destroyed by year of oppression and judgment. And so ultimately is embrace who you are.
Sure, that part I can absolutely value. The thing that I was going to say is, just as my own personal viewpoint of this, say in the context of a relationship, I don't think I would look at things as dependent on each other, but rather as a man and woman as dependent on each other, but rather things that complete each other. But now on a spiritual, and by complete, the complete is maybe not even in the sense that you got to be complete on your own first, and you have to be happy on your own first. But then together you can create something that's even bigger and higher. But that's not to say that without that you would be incomplete. I guess that's kind of the way I look at it.
Ideally, is not two halves of a circle that meet each other and create a circle. It's two whole circles that meet each other and create the infinite.
Absolutely. Yeah. Perfect.
Okay. That's exactly what it is. But some people still believe that just my other half. You don't have enough. You're whole. You're meeting another whole, and then you're creating magic.
Yeah, you know? I can absolutely respect that, and that's my viewpoint as well. I think as far as the oppression part is concerned, that's interesting to me. I think that's an interesting topic to discuss. First of all, because there's many examples to be made of this. I do, to an extent, that is absolutely true. Like, for example, I'm sure you're probably aware of this, but like, I don't know if you knew, but in ancient Japan, if anyone, if you don't know, I hope it's not going to infuriate you, but in ancient Japan, if anyone was born female, they would actually basically class them as like Down syndrome person, which was fucking crazy, but and then at the same time, there are I think that one problem with society now is that some people, and this is my perspective, I've seen oppression of women firsthand for growing up in an Islamic country where everyone has to wear hijab and it's compulsory. I've seen it all. But and for my own mother, she's actually a poet. She likes poetry and she likes writing, but what she does is not acceptable in that country. So she's still trapped there somewhere, and that's its own thing. I get it. I do see that oppression part. But on the other hand, I think that as far as, I mean, maybe that's a little bit far away from it, but what are some of the more traditionally, quote unquote, feminine roles? I think that there is absolutely value to those things. It's not to say that just because a woman does certain things and raises children, for example, that she's any less valuable than a man.
No.
It's, yeah. So, and I'll make another example as well, is my own grandmother, and I love and respect her so much for this, actually. But she, as for her degree, and this was before the Islamic Revolution, so our society was way more modern, ironically enough, before the, like during the 70s and before. But she actually studied a degree which basically taught her how to be the perfect, or like the ultimate person, to the woman, to look after the house, raise children, cook food. And I think that's fantastic. The fact that she chose to do that, and that also she was respected for it. No one said to her, "Oh, you're a woman, so you have to do this." No, she chose to do that because she wanted to have a welcoming and warm home for her family. But I think, on the other hand, the problem that I personally see in modern society is that people, simply for the sake of trying to get away from what they might have been classed as, there's this sort of rebellion against those virtues, I would call them. And then there's this, it feels to me that there's an imbalance that that people, I don't think people are happy in today's society, and they seem to have gone further and further away from a lot of those things which, for better or worse, did work for humans for a very long time. Now, I think that we still could have done better than we did before, in the sense that I think art, poetry, or not even just that, but what a woman possesses, her drive and strength and creativity, should absolutely be respected. I'm all for that. But also, I don't know. I don't think that the way that society is headed at the moment, which is very much an anti-traditionalist kind of an approach, at least that's how I see it, especially when I look at the younger kids nowadays, I don't think they're happy at all. I don't think that they're headed in a very good direction that's going to serve their evolution, if I'm honest.
You use a keyword in there, which is freedom of choice.
Sure.
Is any path is the right one if you choose with awareness? And this means that not choosing because you let your emotion choose for you, or don't choosing before, you don't have choose before because society tell you, and so you have fear of judgment. I think that today, anyway, the role of women started to change at the moment that women were not afraid anymore of the judgment of being themselves, and step out of those roles that were attached to them independently if they wanted or not. So the problem that I have is with those kind of situation, not with the role itself. And so if you decided to do that or not to do that because it's an aware choice, that's good. You can be a mother, you can be a businesswoman, you can be a warrior, you can be a soldier, you can be a daughter, you can be whatever you want if it's that what you want. And you choose with awareness based on who you are. But there have been circumstances in life in the past, even sometimes still there are, where there is not the choice, or women do not make those choices based on freedom of choice and awareness. And of course, I think this can be extended to men as well, but I talk only of what I know. So I cannot talk for men. I cannot talk from their point of view. And for me it would be disrespectful to talk for them. you know?
And equally, that grants the thing that it would be disrespectful for men to do the same for you, right?
To talk about my own things.
Yeah,
Well,
like as in like in the sense that you just put it.
yeah, well, I need to be honest with you. Just, I don't take things much personally.
Okay,
I mean,
sure.
And
Yeah.
I think that a man cannot know what I experience as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
He can have a similar experience, but will be different in his own experience. So, and before that, he cannot know what I experience myself as this spiritual being in this body. Okay? So most of the time, if someone tries to explain to me what I'm feeling or what I'm experiencing, I say, okay, I just like there might be some time that there are some outside view that can give you some insight. So I listen to everything. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't belong to me, I let it go. Mm-hmm. There might be situation where it's required that I assert or I voice what I think in a certain way. But in general, for me, it's more a choice of the person. If you want to talk about something you don't know, you just tell me what kind of person you are. That's all. And that is a statement. It's not, and you're who you are, good or bad. I don't care. I just don't attach quality to things. You are a person that is bossy. Is okay. It is what it is. You are a person that is close-minded. It is what it is. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help who needs me. The rest, it is what it is. If there is something I can change for the better, I will. But if it's something that I can't, and I feel doesn't belong to my path, why should I just waste my energy to change someone else, change the mind of someone that is, maybe is not meant to change the mind because it's not part of his path? I mean, there are many things, I myself, because all what it matters for me is, and what I have power on is my choice, is my thoughts, is how I decide to deal with my emotion. For me, is disrespectful, wanted to speak for someone else, I cannot know the experience of. And that's myself. If for someone else is not, their own choice, I don't care. It's my own choice that meant for me, that has a meaning of what I do, and that I have a power on.
Well, I think that's actually a very powerful thing, and I am fully there with you on that. I think that we share the same perspective when it comes to that. But you always have to think that when someone observes you or anything, people observe and see things out in the world that are in a way that's a reflection of them, right? And a lot of times you don't know what that person is seeing in you, that they might react a certain way or they might say or think certain things, but it's always a reflection of them rather than what it is that you're presenting with them. So I'm with you on that, but you also have to understand not many people out there in the world know this or they feel that way. They're much more dependent. I guess you for yourself, as someone who's embarked on very much an independent journey of just discovering your inner self and that, I think you'll probably have that perspective. But a lot of people, they base a lot of, I think, how they perceive themselves on also how other people perceive them, which I think is just wrong. I don't think that's there are things you can learn from interacting with people, absolutely, but your actual identity is something that I believe should very much come from within, and to an extent the community that you choose to associate yourself with. Just on the topic of the masculine and feminine that we were talking about, that, and we're talking about the being born into, as a female or a male, just from a point of curiosity, I'm not getting political about this, but just from a spiritual perspective, when you're talking about energies, what would be your observation of transgender people, particularly like how we see this today, where I think there's like, according to them, there's like 97 genders and things like that. What's the sort of spiritual assessment of that whole thing?
In my tradition, the body is very important and is a mean also for your spiritual experience and magical experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't, and the body has its own identity, which is, or better, has its own reality, biological reality. So because a transgender woman is a biological male, cannot access the Dianic tradition.
Mm-hmm.
A transgender man, if would like to, he could access the Dianic tradition because as a biological female. But usually they don't, because they don't see themselves in that, on being female. So simply put, it's like a gynecologist deal with biological females and some kind of medical assistant that to give only to biological females, and that's because there is that specific situation. So my tradition is specific for females, and we only consider female from a biological point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's connected to the body, which is the tool we experience life, where the healing needs to happen, when where the magic happen, it can be felt. So, and that's all. It's very simple like that. It's not that, it's not trying to invalidate any kind of reality or self-identity or whatever. It's just that there is some mysteries that pass through the body, and if you don't have a female body, a biological female body, you cannot do that experience. Even if you have your womb is removed, still your cells are programmed in a certain way, which is different. It's all your body that is female. It's not just your genitalia. Okay?
Yeah.
So,
sure. Yeah, I understand.
And so this is what it is. It's not a tradition that would see sweet, yes, the needs of a transgender woman, but simple like that. But having said that, we do not attach any quality, better or worse, or to this like principle base, both regarding in general to male biology. So it doesn't mean that we are better than or they are worse than. It's not. There is no quality attached. It's just a different experience. It's a different path, and it's an exclusive path or specific reality. That's all.
Sure. I think, earlier when I mentioned that I think people are unhappy with the way that they're going, I think part of that was perhaps indirectly about this particular thing as well, because nowadays there are people that, what you just said, I think is very reasonable. I think it's very straightforward, but and there shouldn't be many ways to argue it, you would think, but there are people nowadays that are actually trying to change the definition of what that even means, to be a woman or to be a man, even. And I think that's perhaps a part of the where we're going wrong, is that it is not to invalidate anyone by any means, absolutely, but
I think it's dangerous to think that gender identity is something as gender identity actually exists, because I don't even know anymore. And biological sexual reality, I think it's dangerous to believe or to imply that these are the same. It's dangerous from a medical point of view, because if I go to the doctor and I have to check, some of my value need to be checked, and I come out as a woman, there are some value within myself of hormones and things that are normal if I am a biological female, and means I'm close to death if I am a biological man. Okay?
Of course.
So if I want to present myself, so even a medical things, he came out as a woman, but he's a biological male, and say, okay, this value is a woman, is okay. But where? No, it's a biological male. So means that there might be this problem. Okay? So it's also, I think, to keep a difference between, in the sense that women or transgender women, men or transgender men, is also necessary to preserve the health of this category of people, that they have their own experience that, again, I cannot speak about because it's not my reality. So I don't want, it would be disrespectful for me to speak about they and pretend to know what it means to live their own reality. But it can be dangerous because we need to understand that biology is there, it does exist. And there are many transgender people that understand that and the clear difference of those, you know? It's not that everyone tend to mix the two things together, but is the middle way, and we need to find a way to work and preserve the right of all the categories involved in some way. And so today what I see, and is something, there is a kind of race toward inclusion and to all cost, for example, when is exclusive things are important because we are all different, and it's important to create those space. My spiritual tradition is exclusive of the female sex, is exclusive of the female mysteries. And that is also what is part of the tradition and make that tradition powerful and give power, because it's passed through rituals that are repeated in the same way years and years and years, you know? And something as female mysteries and male mysteries, they've always been there. They existed from the base of the religion and spirituality. They are important things. And I think this all calling to inclusivity and to just generalize is really bringing to a kind of homologation, and which I don't think is a good thing. I don't see that as a good thing, because you can still be exclusive and there can still be respect. Being exclusive doesn't mean being disrespectful or being or hating something. The problem that in order to keep some kind of division, there are some kind of agenda that want to attach to some terms and situation things like hate and something is better than another things. When we live, our old world is based on differences. An ecosystem is alive because there is a biggest is the value of entropy or difference of chaos inside the ecosystem. More is multi-layer, more species there are, stronger is that ecosystem it is. Okay, so different is good. Different is life. If we try to just put everything under the same category, into the same box, we are killing our own individual existence, and so our own role and purpose in this world. So I'm for differences. I'm for exclusivity. I am for individual path and self-development. And also because it's the only way you can interact with the other person. Sometimes it's also good to say, okay, how you see me? How did you interpret my word? Not because I want to present myself in a way that's more acceptable, but because maybe I'm not aware that is happening within myself, or that my way to interact is creating these consequences. So I learn for myself how to interact in a way that if I recognize that something is going on there, because sometimes it just be that, well, you just don't like the way I talk, that's too bad. I'm not going to change my weird accent with that I cannot even change because you don't like it, you know?
I think it sounds good, actually.
Thank you. Yeah. I can't. So, it doesn't work. like that for some things. But for other, being open to listen the other person is a way to reflect on our own self and actually say, yes, this thing is actually going on I didn't see, or not. This is a problem this is not my problem. It's a problem of perception. I am responsible for what I say, not for the way you perceive that. You know?
Yeah, I think I really like what you said about the whole thing of exclusivity, and I think that if you think about it, I mean, I'm very much I've always been, since I was very young, quite anti-authoritarian, and one thing that I can especially recognize as an adult, it's this sort of systematic mindset in place that you're either team blue or you're team red. You can't think for yourself, So, for example, if you're a vegan, you're left wing. If you're a carnivore, you're right wing. If you got vaccinated, you're left wing. If you didn't, you're a right wing, flat earther, Trump supporter, Nazi. And there doesn't seem to be like any kind of middle ground. And I think the whole beauty of it is just for people to be able to think for themselves and be able to, just find their own path. And I get that to an extent. There's so much information out there that can very much confuse people, and you could be thinking something your entire life, because people are very, what's the right word? We're very placid, so like you could have a journey your entire life, but then someone comes out of nowhere and then tells you, well, like, let's say you, for example, you were born in Italy, and you mentioned you were born in a town in a city in Sicily, correct? Someone could come up to you and then say, hey, did you know that you might be Korean? And then you'd be like, well, no, I was born in Sicily. But then a part of you will still think, it's like, am I Korean? Am I? And then it's like, we're very placid as human beings, and it's easy to kind of get sidetracked along the way. But I think the important thing is to always be cautious of where this thinking is leading to. Because another thing is as well, the more we're put in boxes, the more we can be controlled by the powers that be and by other people in governmental situations.
Yeah, that's why for me it's always the middle way.
Yeah.
That's the way I can, and most of the time I make my own path, because there is truth, in a little bit of truth in everything. But, the only way I know how to live my life is through my own head. It's always been like that. And maybe I was lucky from that point of view. I always had maybe circumstance around me brought me to develop this kind of way to deal with life. But also because for what I needed to do, I needed to develop this kind of self-awareness, or better, like, stand on my own feet, because I couldn't do what I'm doing if I couldn't do that. So I'm very much the kind that, doubt is the base of knowledge.
Sure.
And truth. I cannot get to truth if I do start to doubting about things. And yes, I believe the world is round, and 99%. There is 1% that I might be wrong. I never been there with my own eyes. I never experienced that and see with my own eyes from the heart and see that it's round, flat. There is always a 1% that I might be wrong in something that I can say the heart is round. But, I keep that as a doubt. And so I don't judge. Ashley would say, no, it's actually flat. Okay, if that is what you strongly believe, it's okay. And let's say, if that doesn't really create a problem, why to make one? There are circumstances where you need to take a part, because it's really, you need to take a part. But most of other circumstances, it's just creating a way to keep people busy toward things outside themselves. Yeah. So they don't go within, and they don't develop, and they don't develop self-sovereignty, which is something I teach to women. because it's a fundamental part of yourself. And so if you are so caught to all these things happening outside of yourself, and politics and wars and everything, which is important because we live in a society, in a web of relations and life, we cannot say, no, I close myself in my own world and that's all. But most of the time, we spend so much time wasting our energy to what is happening outside ourselves that we don't go within, and we don't deal with our own things, and we don't develop, we don't evolve in the better version of ourselves, or what we can be. And that's reflect in the society. If people would start to work individually on themselves, society will improve, even without acting directly in the society. Because society is made of singular people, you know? But it's easier, and that is what the powers, or who is in control, I don't know, there are theories about all these things as well, try to do. Let's keep them busy. Let's put a lot of things in their head so they don't go within, they don't start to develop their own inner tool of intuition, of gut feeling, of logical, and they don't start to bring together their mind and their heart.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
And so we can control them, and we can keep this kind of dynamics. But you know, I can do still a search point. I can talk with you and share this. Someone might listen and say, you know, maybe there is something true in there. With the people, the women I help, the people I interact with, the only way I know how to help is through my voice and my action, and living by sample, you know?
Living by example, you mean, like by basically fulfilling your own purpose. And that's actually the thing I mentioned earlier, is that the way you've ended up helping all these other women is actually by discovering yourself more than anything, and tapping into your own potential. Tell you what, I'll make you an example here. And this is really what I think, because I think what you just said was perfect. And I think that we know more about space than we know about what's here on Earth in the sea, right?
Yes.
I think we know even less about what's within ourselves. And I think that the more we delve into that, the better it can get in parts of knowing ourselves, you know. And sometimes you can only really weigh things about yourself by sort of, I guess, putting them against certain events, you know, like how did you handle this situation? How did you react? And you know, things like that. And you know, I mean, one thing that I guess could bring us back to the whole the feminine aspect of the Great Mother, or the goddess that you mentioned. There is one quote in the Bible. Now, I get that it's Bible, but this one particular quote, I'm not a Christian or anything, but this one particular quote, I think I don't judge. It's very interesting to me in particular, and it's that man was made in the image of God, and this to me says a lot about everything. And it's like you could just think of it and then think, okay, so it was some guy with a beard, so now men have beard. No. This is way bigger than that. And you can look at that you can observe the structure of the cosmos, or that we obviously do understand the feminine nature of the Great Mother, as you say. And then that's only one observation through the Dianic traditions, but then there's also many others that will point to the same thing. And it's that even if you look at a human being that is being formed when the mother is pregnant, initially that's a female body before it then basically gets selected. Yeah. That's right. That's right. You know, and it's always that, and you see that in the nature of things. You know, that there is that polar aspect in nature of the North Pole, South Pole, or the plus and the negative, and that very much is a part of our existence as a whole. But the fact that there's chaos and then there's order. And what we are is controlled chaos, essentially. And if you observe the cosmos, that seems to be the way it
yes,
works.
that is the kind of principle that I would say about the life starting from female, no? And it's like, that we were talking about. Is it true that if people would start to look within themselves, they could understand so much more of space as well?
Yes. Well, this is exactly the thing. You know, I realized this about when I was 19 years old and first took LSD for the first time. I realized that it's all in there.
And I tell you more. This is the reason why ASTRUM LUCIFERA means star bringer of light.
Of course.
So the connection with, we are made of star. We are conscious star. Okay, we're made, the same constituent of our body and ourself is the same we find in space. And so maybe we're just stars doing experience of this material reality and consciousness. Who knows? We will understand at a certain point, I guess.
Absolutely, yes, yeah, that is true. And for any of the listeners that might not have known, but yeah, that we are basically, human beings are made of the same material that is essentially stardust.
Yeah.
That is actually why, the lyric for one of my songs for the next album that my band's doing, the song opens with the line, "I am a dead star dreaming the cosmic cycle." And that's basically what that is referring to, which is fantastic. It's great. I love hearing your perspective on that, and it's very fascinating to me. And just before we continue a little bit further, is it okay if we have a quick break? If you still have more time,
Yeah. I'm fine.
Yeah. By the way, I've been meaning to tell you this the whole time we've been talking, that I've been very much enjoying using some of the oils and the sprays that I actually bought from you last time in Cardiff.
That's great to hear. I'm always happy when I hear that my product are serving well people. There is a lot of intention in them, of course, but it's also that because of the principle that we were talking of animism and everything as a consciousness, these products sometimes they have a life of themselves and they interact with the person based on what they need, And there's also one of the principles why the use of plants and oils and essence and plant the right material in the magical and spiritual area.
Yeah. But this is actually, I wanted to ask you about this because there's so many different facets to this. I mean, for example, just how would we even go about interacting with these plants from a spiritual perspective, and how do you, obviously there's the intentions, and from my understanding, it also matters what time you create these kind of ingredients in as well, or you mix the oils together. I'm very fascinated in that.
Well, let's say that in that case, you need to follow one of the courses I'm working on.
Okay, sure. I see.
Taking apart, a little like marketing moment. No,
yeah,
okay.
Nicely done.
Apart is that we were talking about that concept of animism and this idea of a consciousness, okay? And many other consciousness that come from it, And the fact that of holographic, that the little part contain the whole. So it's a very long topic, but try to give some points of understanding. We acknowledge the plant, and from a spiritual point of view, have a spirit that is called a deva, which is the spirit of a specific category of plants, like all the plants of lavender have the same deva, and they also have some individual spirits, which is the character of the plant itself, of each single plant. When we work with material that derive from this plant, for the holographic principle, we are holding a whole within the little part, which is the conscious of the plant, which is the deva or the specific spirit of plant, together with the individual spirit of the plant. Spirit means what gives life, and that implies consciousness and intelligence as well. So when we work with these plants, they have their own characteristics and energies, their own consciousness we interact with. Of course, as I was saying, joking about the course, is a spiritual path, the plant shamanism, and which is something that for me is very important, the relationship with plant. That is also one of the way I create, for example, my plant spirit essences, which are like flower essences, plant essence, and other things. Concerning the oil, they themselves, they are still embody the conscious of the plant, but also is what they are used mostly for energy, spiritual purpose, of course, the essence as well for medicine and healing. But the oil, anointing oil, and spray and incense is something that is very much used in magical practices, because some of the characteristics of this plant can be used for example, prosperity, love, or protection, or to they might be connected to a specific elemental, which is connected to a specific planet, which has some characteristic that was the planetary oils, for example, that you were used. In my case, I use the plants that fit a specific purpose, and I create the oil for that purpose. So you have prosperity oil, love, or spray, and an incense, or you can have a planetary oil to work with a specific planet and energy. And so in my case, it's based on what is my own relationship, my own acquired knowledge of more than 20 years of working with plants and study from an esoteric or occult point of view, the planetary correspondence. I mean, there is so much in there. And also, when I create the plant spirit essence, is my own personal connection with the plant. I connect with the plant, I see what messages and medicine they want to share, and I create an essence based on that. But I need to build a relationship first. And the way you build a relationship, there are specific ways you can do that. Again, that's
okay.
If you want.
Yeah. Sure.
My courses will be available. No, joke apart. There is a big topic, and but we need to consider the concept of consciousness, and if the consciousness, the conscious spirit of a plant, and that becomes a teacher to us.
Yeah.
And that kind of consciousness and energy interact with our own energy, rebalancing, reharmonizing, or like bringing out some specific vibration that we need or we want to work on.
Are there any specific types of plants that you work with? Because I know there are thousands and thousands, if probably millions actually, of different plants.
I specifically very much love the poison plants. So, and one of my favorites is Datura, which is for me is very much connected with that galactic energy and star energy, and is also connected to the pineal gland, and to develop the pineal gland and help to see beyond the veil of illusion of reality. And of course, these are some of the information I gather from the plants. I remember that once I was doing my work meditating, and something weird came as a message, which was the sound of stars.
The sound of stars.
So I started just to listen to the sound of stars. There is sound, there is like recording of the pulsar stars and the sound, and each stars has specific sound.
Sure, yeah.
And I don't know yet why I needed to do that, but that was the message. I didn't even know there was something as the sound star, but I started to listen, and because there was something I needed. Maybe they needed to, because music, as a musician, you know, is energy, is vibration, and they can unlock things. So probably there was something that needed to happen within myself through that energy support of that sound.
Yeah.
But for example, they can give you some message and you say, okay, sound star, does it something like that? And actually I found a lot of recordings for that.
Yeah.
So this was one of the messages, for example, from the Datura, based on the work I was doing with her. And so poison plants, belladonna is another one, and aconite, because also it's very safe to make essence from poison plants.
Okay.
And they work a lot on addressing traumas and all those things that are connected with the dark side of the psyche as well. So deep trauma and fears, the poison plants work very well to address them. Instead, the medicine of healing plant is more soft, if you want to say, and more orientated toward healing and harmonization. And of course, there are some plants that are on the borderline, as for example, mugwort, for example. And but yes, so mugwort is another plant that I really love. Also because it's a plant that works as a guide on meeting other plants. So it's a kind of it's an initiatory plant. We want to define like that. And yes, but for example, on my web store where there are all the essence, there are some of the messages on the description of the essence that I received by the plants. I only make essence from plants that I connected with.
Of course. I think that's actually really interesting, and I'm curious to get into that a bit more. But if we're talking about plants, I mean, I'm this is probably, I don't know if this might even be an obvious question, but if we're talking about plant medicine in particular, I'm sure that the question of ayahuasca or just DMT comes into mind as well. What would be your connection to that in any way?
I never connected with ayahuasca.
No? Did you try it?
No.
No? Okay.
Because
well, I mean, ayahuasca itself is sorry to interrupt you. I think ayahuasca itself is actually the combination of two different compounds. I think one is essentially the DMT, but then the other is that it stops the enzymes in your stomach from breaking down the DMT, so you can ingest it and experience it in that way. So you never had any experiences with that at all?
No, because I never felt the need. I never felt a call. Because with plants, it's also like this. It's not just, it's a mutual work. So sometimes it's the plants calling you. They say, I want to work with you. I want to talk with you. I have something to tell you. I want something to exchange. And it's like work, like with people. Some people, like, you feel moved toward wanting to talk with them, or like being in their presence, or just share. And the other just doesn't happen. So ayahuasca wasn't part of my path, so I have no opinion on it.
Interesting. Would you ever be keen to try it? No? Okay. That's fascinating to me. That purely just because, I mean, perhaps it's a little bit presumptuous on my end, but it's just interesting to me. I would always think that if you've got the concept of spirituality, and then you've got everything that we've talked about in terms of self-development and finding your inner strength, things like that, but then also plants, I would automatically think, oh yeah, ayahuasca, psychedelics, but perhaps it doesn't always have to be that way.
Poison plants are psychedelic too. But I got some information from, for example, from the Mbane about some of
is that a type of plant?
Yes, it's a
Okay.
black and bay, is another poison plant. I got some information just by connecting with the plant, and after I found in a book that someone was talking about his own experience with the bay, and he needed to be intoxicated to experience that. I just had the plant tell me, well, I'm good to that. Okay. So
That's
it's not for everyone. It was specifically connected to the fact that I go talking with Dembane. It looks like weird. Well, people said she's.
I think I understand, but yes, there's no judgment
Connecting
here.
with Dembane, one of the message was this really connection with the feral power and the solar plexus, and reconnect with your feral and your animal powers, your animal self. And also it's very much good to any kind of work in the underworld, or people that do shamanic journey in the underworld as protection. But very much it was this connection to the animal self and the instinct. And so I was reading in this book, and this person that was saying, by taking in Bane, what I experienced was this rewilding of my senses.
Rewilding of my senses, which goes perfectly with the animal thing that you mentioned.
Yes. And so, but I didn't need to be intoxicated to know that was part of his medicine. So now I make flower essence of henbane, and I give to people. They need to reconnect with their solar plexus energy and instinct and wild self, for example. And they don't need to be intoxicated to do that, because the essence will do the work very well without the intoxication, because the essence is the imprinting, the energy imprinting of the plant spirit, of the consciousness of the plant that is in the essence.
Fascinating. And obviously the question would be, how would one extract that? But that would be on your course, right?
No, that is it's the same principle of the Bach flowers. So you have the flower in a bowl with water, and the mean of the sun that transmits the information into the water. The light that transfers the information in the water, and the water that is charged with the consciousness and the information then is diluted and taken as an essence.
Fuck, that's so interesting, because the thing is as well, like there was that study some years ago by that Japanese scientist, I think in like 2005 or 6, where he tried the different words and things like that with the molecules of water, and then they essentially froze them, and then they looked at them under microscope, and then different things had like a different look in them. And then I know that that's probably something, I'm sure someone somewhere is going to debunk that, but I like that theory.
But it's simple like that. Water is a conductor. We know that. It conducts electricity. Is a conductor.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why I guess
that is enough.
Yeah. I guess that's why one thing that I know one of the very good ways of grounding, as they call it, is obviously there's the thing of just being barefoot on grass, and then there's connecting with nature. But one thing in particular, which I love it, like if I am going through like a pollution of thoughts and emotions, one of the things that really sorts me out is running water. Like one thing that I used to do is, because I mentioned the example of psychedelics, if I used to get a bit of anxiety, I used to go and sit on this toilet, and I used to just run the tap, and that used to calm me down. I know that's probably a really, really wild thing, but now as an adult, because I'm straight edge nowadays, I don't really alter my consciousness through substances anymore. But one thing that I love doing is just standing next to a waterfall or the waves of the sea. That just like it's like it washes away completely.
And that is not just pollution. The action of the water element, is also there is some therapeutic on the sound of the water as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So everything that is part of the water element has an healing quality and a cleansing property,
I guess that's why we have like sound effects of like you can listen to sounds of rain, which can be very relaxing, although it can also make you want to go to the bathroom as well. But
same principle.
Yeah. I guess you're cleansing in a different way, huh? But Yeah, that's fantastic. Just out of curiosity, since we were talking about psychedelics, have you tried anything at all throughout the years? Never.
All the awareness I have, all the answer I got so far, they just came from my own self-discussion with myself. Maybe that is a state of altered consciousness, I think.
That's fascinating to me, and that says a lot. Like I don't doubt that for a second. First of all, like I 100%. I know.
Oh, I would not have problem. I don't even smoke.
Yeah.
I never even touch a cigarette. So
no. Okay. Do you drink alcohol?
Sometimes when I'm out.
Sometimes. You're Italian. You have to. Come on.
Well, I used to drink.
You have to have some red wine, 20s. I would imagine.
Now I just like sometimes. I like, but I don't like very much cocktail. So I go whiskey, brandy, these kind of things, like short, like with no highs, because the highs in brandy and whiskey something, or I don't like. But anyway, so that's usually sometime I do that. But I'm very conscious of keeping my body in a search state, and I'm very much against breathing pollution. For me, the lungs and the voice is a way I interact in the world. And so for me, everything you put it into that can become toxic in some level, even if you smoke some herbs, they can have a way to there are better way to ingest a plant that is much, much healthier than smoke the plant. But that is just my own choice, of course. It's not that I don't. But also, I have a very, very active dream world. And I tend to spontaneously, sometime in some specific moment between the sleep and the waking, I tend to just go around and gather some information. So I do think that maybe some people need to be intoxicated to do that. I can do in a regular night of sleep. Sometimes. And sometimes I wake up that I'm more tired than when I went to sleep. And that's one of the problems. Because I actually believe that I do some work on the dream plane. Because there will not be other explanation.
No, I'm with you on that. I completely believe you. I am actually a very firm believer of that, and that the dream realms are always fascinating to me, especially when you speak about if you can find yourself in a state of being between fully asleep and awake. A lot of very interesting things happen.
It's very scary but if you are able to overcome the feeling of fears and of what you feel around, because it is really much, you can feel everything, like even the drop of rain in the. It's like, as I would explain, like when you lose a nail, it breaks, and the skin, and this feeling on the skin of being completely unarmed. So, you are receptive to everything, to the little, like, to the drops of rain, and these can be scary because you start to. I mean, I had very scary moments, and like. Things happening to me on those states, they were really interesting. I got songs from plants. I got answer about things. I got many things. And so that's a reason why I don't think I need to be intoxicated. I'm good as I am. And that is a lot enough.
Actually, I completely appreciate that. And as I said as well, I have these experiences in the past. I find them interesting to talk about, particularly like when I took mushrooms before, because that's very much something that grows out of the earth. And it makes you, like, just speaking from my experience, if you take mushrooms, you can feel the earth pulsating beneath you. And it's that through the cracks and all the buildings and cities, you can feel the grass and the earth almost speaking to you in that sense. And I believe that to not just be a hallucination. I believe that's just how it is. Obviously, someone like yourself, you spend so many years working on this, you've come to that conclusion on your own, and then that's, I think, very impressive. But also, I guess, a testament to the fact of like how really what's really out there in the world, because I think we see so little of it in this three-dimensional world, if you will. And I think, but the point that I was getting to is that the main reason why I am sober nowadays is exactly that. I want control of my mind and a lot of things as well, especially when you're talking about whiskey and things like that. That opens up the pathways to other things to come in and take control. And I like being in control myself, and because I know how to handle this vessel and my body. And I think that's I guess a part of it which perhaps we actually have in common when it comes to that.
Yes, absolutely. And even when I never been so drunk that I couldn't. I always knew when to stop. I always had the measure on knowing my own body, Sure. And but again, growing up, this needs to keep clean or to just be very mindful of what I put within my body. Might be what I eat, might be what I think, might be the emotions I experience or I decide to experience. And that is important, but also because in order to do what I do, I have a duty that I need to keep some kind of states of my body and mind, because in alternative, I cannot help in the way I have to if I'm not fully within this body,
And I guess that if you are, let's say, if we want to call the plants other deities, even if you are, just for an example, but if you're communicating with anything like that in such a pure form, you want to be 100% yourself. You don't want to have anything external. You don't want to have anything else that's attached to you or influencing you when you're making that communication.
Exactly, absolutely. Because also, whatever happened, even when you communicate with a plant, all what happened in the time and space is relevant. Some information about some plants, for example, aconite, I gather more than from the plant for what was happening in the moment and space. So some information I gather from the spirit of aconite, which is a really tricky spirit, very much in between, is that it helps with fears and facing fears. And something that also I read around after, because what I do, I like to connect with the plant, see what the info I gather, and then confront with what other practitioner might find, And aconite, it helps with fears. And in my case, it was for helping, facing fears. And I remember that this message arrived because there was a synchronicity of something's happening. There were several bees all around the plant and around me. And even if I don't fear bees, having all those bees around can be a little bit, it's this strange place. And then there was a couple that was arguing and was screaming very close, a couple of houses down, and creating this state of tension and fear. So I started to feel, building up within me, this state of tension and fear. And so that emotion I was perceiving, that was the emotion that I say, I can help with that. That is what I can help with, among other things. And I needed to feel within myself in order to codify the message,
Yeah, no, I understand.
Because this is what happened. The conversation with plants is not that you start to hear voice. Maybe some do, but mostly is messages and image and symbols that you receive, and then you need to codify that through your brain. You perceive through your heart, but you codify for your brain. Okay,
right.
That's why connection through the heart and preparing the heart and connecting through the heart is the main focus of being able to communicate with plants.
I think that's it's powerful that you say that, because I think it's manifestation. It's that these messages get manifested in different ways, and you just to me, my sensor for them, I feel, is in my stomach, where information, where it's right or wrong, whether I'm saying the right thing or if I'm
It's
going
called
to
gut
make the right
feeling anyway.
decision. Yeah, exactly. But it literally feels like a physical sensation. And I feel like the more and more I have cleaned myself up, and I still have a long way to go, but just on the side of substances alone, that is like is so much more heightened. And there's like so many things you can do with life and with the world that is it's crazy, you know. Like sometimes if something just doesn't feel right, then you act upon it. Or if there's something that you feel like you should really do, even though maybe it doesn't make sense, you do it, and then you will understand why you had to do it. And like you said, you have to decode the messaging, you know. Like one way, which I don't know if you'll relate to this, but one way which I personally feel like I notice a lot of interesting patterns is through time. So by observing the clock, a lot of times I might see like mirrored numbers, or there's like the same number over and over and over again. And obviously I don't want to I don't want to mess with it by talking about it, because I never talk about it, but I think it's an interesting thing that these things are there. And there's ways that when you pay attention and you look around, you'll see that the universe is speaking to us
because consciousness is everywhere.
Precisely, that's right. And I think that's fascinating. It's like I feel like everyone should know that, but you could easily get.
Let's make this viral. Everyone will
know. Absolutely. But yeah, I think it's good, and it's interesting to me how your particular connection of that comes specifically through plants. Because they're such a big part of what we know as life on this planet, and they don't exist anywhere else but our Earth, or at least as far as we know. And I think that's very, very interesting.
Yeah, there is a lot to talk about that, but that's really
so
another. But there is a lot.
Sure.
There is a lot.
Just as a point of curiosity as well, obviously, when you're going through the process of either making these oils or communicating with these plants, how much does astrology have any room in any of all of this, or any relevance, I should say?
Yes. Okay. This is the same is the same principle when we perform magic. Is it true that magic comes from ourselves? Having other energy that support the work can help. So ideally, we can create an oil based on the specific time of the day, or time or day of the week, that is connected to a specific planet you are creating the oil for, or the purpose you are creating the oil for. And let's add another layer of power on it. Although your intention is the main things, but it's the difference that you can have from swimming against the current and swimming with the current pushing you. It might be easier, right?
Sure.
Although you will arrive there eventually, maybe, I don't know, when the current is too much against you. Sometimes spells do not work for this reason. But anyway, and so it's important, but not like
necessary.
The most important thing is my awareness, my intention, and my ability to focus the energy into what I am creating. But if I can add the layers also of, I try on my best, for example, to produce and create, or what I do in a specific moon phases when the energy is more supportive, or a time, especially when I'm creating the planetary oil. Although it makes more sense when you use the oil for example, a planetary oil for a specific spell, you might want to do that in the hour of the planet, you know? So these things are much more relevant, I would say, during performing spell, but it's important also when you create something. But again, if there is that, and there is not the intention and the power to focus, and also to the love that you want to put to help with that intention, the astrology happening doesn't do much. It's an added value to what must be the base, which is your intention, your love, and your ability to focus the energy into and bring that into what you are creating.
Absolutely, I understand that now. So essentially, it's a tool to, I guess, speed things up, or give it that much more boost.
Reinforce.
In a sense.
But I noticed that the things I created, they work equally good from the feedback of people, even if they were not made in a specific astrological moment that could be particularly useful. But it's also some tradition and people and the way they practice. Some people are really focused on that precise moment, and that's okay, work for them. And
so
it can be done in another way.
Yeah. I think that's very interesting, and that pretty much answers my question on that. So when it comes to just the oils, or like whether it's planetary or anything else, what's the protocol for using them? Do you just burn them, or do you apply them to yourself? Because I know that
my specific oil are made to be wear them, because that is a way to work directly with your home vibration. And so you can attract what you embody, because you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are vibrating off.
Okay, so you don't attract what you want, you attract
what you are vibrating off.
Okay,
so,
right.
If you want abundance, you need to vibrate of that abundance. If you want love, you need to embody the love. So that's why I was saying, what is the emotion I'm addicted, and how they can perform in my ability to obtain or manifest what I want in my life.
Okay, yeah.
Because that is what you're embodied, okay? And so wearing the oil is a way to move your vibration toward that purpose. And so this is a reason why all the base of my oil is jojoba, because it's the best you can use on the skin. And another way is use on tools to address dress candle, petition paper, all those passages that are part of a magical ritual, a magical practice, Some people burn them. I don't know. You could do that, but I don't know that, because I use jojoba, which is thicker as a oil. I don't know how much it works by being burned in some water, Some people do that too, but the main use I suggest is wear it and use to anoint tools, magical tools or objects based on what you need to do and what is the purpose for what you're doing.
Oh, interesting. So you can anoint objects as well.
Yes. You can anoint your wallet with the prosperity oil.
Right. That's very interesting. And I think, that I like this, and I never thought of it this way until I met you in person, and then we were talking about that. But you said that, let's say, for example, I'm Scorpio, and then you were telling me that my natural energy would be very much of a kind of like a dark, mysterious nature, and obviously of like
very connected with the underworld. The Scorpio is the king of the underworld, goes very deep in
Hades, exactly. And I think and that was interesting to me. But you said that, so if I wanted, let's say, an oil, I don't necessarily need to go for something that's exactly the same as I already am, but rather something that I'm not, which I'm trying to achieve or get to that level. And I thought that was very interesting, and I don't know why I never quite looked at any of these things quite the same way before, but it makes perfect sense now, actually. And yeah, I think it's a very interesting thing, because I feel like you could almost do anything, like you could reach pretty much any kind of potential throughout life. And I guess that you could, like, just speaking of the planets alone, because obviously each one of them, at least as far as the mythology, but also the astrology is concerned, each one has its own characteristics and energies that are related to it. Like, for example,
Yes.
Mars is very much, as we know, the god of war, but it's very much to do with a direct sense of approach and things like that, and it's quite confrontational. I guess that each one of these are things that you can use in day-to-day life rather than just one thing because you think that you relate to that, if that makes sense.
Well, because most of the time is in our what we really want to achieve is a state of balance in the middle way. Most of the time it's normal to be drawn toward the things that we already are familiar with, that we can be abundant of or we can be dependent on. But if we want to achieve balance, we want to give to ourselves what we are lacking in that moment. And so sometimes might be nourishment, sometimes might be us like a most active, stronger energy. Depend.
Yeah.
We are all different. And so being able to meet, to experience what is different from us, it can open door to also experience other parts of ourselves, of who we are, that we never knew we could have if we didn't give the possibility to manifest.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's yeah.
And another way, for example, that came out this topic randomly talking with a person, of course, is that people tend to escape pain, and the things get worse and worse and worse when they need to be with the pain and understand what is the message that is carrying and what part of yourself you will experience by being with a specific emotion, because that is one of the emotions people tend to escape from more. As soon as someone is in pain, might be for grief, might be the first things everyone, just don't think of it. Put out your mind from that. Just think to ourselves, something else. But healing pass through the experience of that pain and the experience of that part of ourselves we are within that pain. And that is another part of self-discovering.
Well, I always considered pain to be a universal currency for life. And like I mentioned, the I mean, obviously you're speaking of pain more from an emotional perspective, and I guess I'm looking at it more from a literal sense. But I think that,
but even in the literal sense, there is an emotional involvement.
I guess, yes, yeah. Actually, you are right. Yeah, and I think that the way that I was coming from this is that, as I mentioned earlier, like the painful thing a human could experience is childbirth. And look, what is the reward of that is literally life, and that's where I come from with that. And I think that that's just that theory alone is something that could be very useful if applied to the other.
And I tell you something more. During experience of child giving birth, women also experience some little percentage of psychotropic DMT that is produced inside the women body.
I have heard of this. Yeah.
We become psychedelic being in the moment of pregnancy. I didn't experience myself, not really interested to be a mother, but that is just my own path.
Sure.
But yes, that is something that happened.
Fascinating. Well, your path, I mean, you have all these, all the different businesses, and everything that you've done is so well intertwined.
Those are all my children.
Yes.
More the people I help, those are also my children.
Yeah,
so
I like that.
I'm good.
That's fantastic. I think we've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to speak to you about.
Okay.
I'm sure there's going to be something that's going to come nagging at me. It's like, you should have asked Cristina about this.
You can have me again.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure. I very much enjoyed the chat, Cristina. Thank you so much for your time and just sharing your energy here with us tonight.
My pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine.
As a Gemini, I love to talk.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. That works for me. Perfect. Do you have anywhere where people can come and check out your work if they want to contact you, if they want to support what you're doing?
Yes, absolutely. If they want to know, okay, my personal webpage, maybe we can leave some in the comments because they are all Latin words. So sometimes the way we are spelled is different. So we will leave the reference. But for my personal work, counseling and courses, they can find me to www.astrumlucifera.com or CristinaPandolfo.com. They both bring to the same webpage. Then the products are available on www.inluminelunae.com, and we will leave there and the link, of course. And concerning the women that are interested in the Dianic tradition, if they want to read more, they can go to dominalunae.com. I can leave that as well. Of course, I'm on Instagram as ASTRUM LUCIFERA for my personal page, and In Lumine Lunae is the shop, and both the same name you can find on Facebook. But it would be easier probably to leave some when we leave information on the description, and I don't know the format usually. And because some words, of course, people might miss that because I love Latin, and so but is even the way you speak, the pronunciation is different, and for an English person, it can be even more British person, or it can be.
Well, I noticed you just said Lucifera, and that was different to how.
Yeah, the actual is Lucifera is the right spelling.
Perfect. Well, all of these will be in the description. I just wanted you to give a quick brief as to what each one does.
Yes, and I'm available. I'm here to help. That's what I do.
Fantastic. Well, Cristina, once again, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real blast to speak to you tonight. I really value our conversation. And and to everyone else listening to the podcast, thank you very much for listening. I hope you've took away something of value. See you on the next episode of Iblis Manifestations. Cheers.